The top 10 main battle tanks in the world. The main battle tank, MBT, is a hallmark of modern warfare. Since the final years of the First World War, the land battleship concept has enchanted the minds of ground warfare planners. At present, there are 10 tanks that stand out above all others. Armor, speed, mobility, strength were once all key components in determining which nation had the greatest tanks. During the Second World War, the Germans were known for the technical prowess and innovation of their engineers. German Wehrmacht tanks were the envy of the world. Yet, they were costly and hard to mass produce. The American tanks, on the other hand, were believed to be lesser tanks than their German rivals. Yet, the Americans could easily mass produce these tanks and essentially swarm the enemy battle formations. Soviet tanks were also known for their advantages, so much so that they were wildly popular as exportable weapons platforms. Elizabeth Owens, writing over at Warrior Maven, assesses the newest metrics for determining the best MBTs in the world, now defined by their artificial intelligence and remote sensing capabilities. But suppose these capabilities aren't all they're cracked up to be in a modern combat setting. After all, the Russians possess one of the most advanced MBTs ever designed, the T-1 for Armata, and it has essentially been retired from the Ukraine war because they are simply too expensive and too complex to maintain in the crucible of modern combat. Given this, the Russians have been forced to rely upon their less advanced, older, Soviet-era T-72 MBT. The Americans, too, continue to rely upon their decades-old M1 Abrams MBT that defined America's lightning victory over Saddam Hussein's forces in Desert Storm. So, while sophistication can define the greatness of a modern MBT, perhaps there's more than just whiz-bang gizmos that should be the metric for defining greatness. Things like survivability, affordability, reliability, and reproductibility should all be factors in determining a tank's greatness. We must also keep in mind what the purpose of a tank really is. Go back to the darkest days of WWI, when the first tanks were developed and deployed. Back then, the battle lines had been static. The offensive war of maneuver initiated by Germany in 1914 had been degraded and replaced by a defensive-oriented trench war. Both sides had tired of the interminability of the conflict. Both sides had effectively frozen the war along those trenches, unable to overcome the other. Both sides sought decisive advantages to break through, and the only way to bust through those lines was with technology. Hence, the advent of the tank. From that point on, through every war since, the basic purpose of the tank in attack was to punch through fortified enemy lines with fast-moving heavy armor and weapons, as well as to push deep into the enemy's rear, so as to create an overall tactical opportunity for your side to encircle and break the entrenched enemy's resistance. But today, MBTs must contend with a bevy of new threats. Things like Javelin anti-tank weapons, aerial drones laden with explosives, sophisticated improvised explosive devices, IED, and other unconventional systems have given defenders significant advantages. And it seems that the more modern the tank, the more damaging to an attacking force their loss is, as is the case with the Russian T-1 for Armata. The top 10 tanks on planet Earth from least to greatest. 10. British Challenger 3. The tank is equipped for modern electronic warfare capabilities and has enhanced armor protection for its crew, as well as high-tech sensors that allow for long-range target acquisition and tracking for the tank commander. 9. British Challenger 2. The British Challenger 2 is one of the most overhyped MBTs imaginable. Equipped with an L30 120mm tank gun, firing both long rod penetrator and high explosive squash head HESH ammunition natures, according to the Rheinmetall website, the builder of the Challenger tanks. 8. German Leopard 2. These tanks are sophisticated, they are maneuverable, they have efficient engines and even greater firepower. But, as with all Western technology, there aren't enough of them available and the system is far too expensive and complex to easily reproduce in a timely fashion. In the areas where these tanks can mass, they can be quite effective. 7. Russian T-14 Armata. Billed as Russia's greatest tank, this tank is almost too overrated to waste time writing about. Yes, it is truly next level. But it is so advanced that it's way too expensive and complicated to produce in large numbers. 6. Chinese T-99. It has an active laser protection system that helps defend it against incoming missiles, disrupts enemy tank optical gear, and can even be deployed against enemy helicopters. Although, these tanks are relatively untested in combat, still, it's a relatively affordable, easily mass-produced tank that brings with it some helpful features. 5. Korean K2 Black Panther. It has an excellent engine, incredible defenses, a potent 120mm smoothbore gun that can fire up to 10 to 15 rounds per minute. South Korea created this next-generation MBT to counter what it feared would be an eventual North Korean invasion. There's just one problem: the K2 is wildly expensive. 4. French Leclerc XL. This MBT is designed for speed and maneuver. It can travel 50 miles per hour and can blast targets as far as 2.5 miles away. This tank is lighter than many of its third-generation MBT counterparts, such as the M1 Abrams. Because of its lightness, it is nowhere near as well armored as the other tanks it competes against are. The Leclerc does possess reactive armor, though, just like the Leopards do. 3. Israel's Merkava V. Nicknamed Barak, or Lightning, Israel's Merkava V MBT not only has advanced technology, such as sensors and electronic warfare abilities, but it also has an artificial intelligence system. 2. American M1 Abrams. A legendary MBT with a marvelous service record, this tank is one of the world's finest systems. Sadly, it is aging. And the upgraded Abrams X version, while it will be even more sophisticated than its predecessor, including having an onboard AI system, like the Israelis have on their new tank, it is no longer relevant to the battlefield. 1. Russian T-72. The reason that this old Soviet tank is the best in the world is because of the fact that it is used by multiple countries, it is easy to operate, and cheap. The Russians have found that their war in Ukraine has not gone well by using either its T-90M MBT or its aforementioned T-1 for Armata. The T-72 has kept the Russians in the fight. What's more, these systems are easy to mass produce, and when they're lost, so many have been lost in combat, it doesn't really matter, because Russia can simply quite easily and cheaply produce many more. The T-72, despite the drones and other hardships it has endured, is winning the war against Ukraine for Russia. It isn't being done with any finesse, but it's getting the job done. That's why this is the greatest tank in the world today.